stand, we rise, we care our lives. We stand, we rise, we care our lives.
It began long ago, when darkness through its deceit captured the hearts of the sons and daughters of light. We looked for light, but we found only darkness. We searched for bright skies, but walked in gloom. We fumbled like the blind along the wall, feeling our way like people without eyes. We were destined to fall, even in the brightest days. We stumbled as if it were dark. Among the living, we were like the dead. We looked for justice, but it never came. We looked for rescue, but it was far from us. So he himself stepped in to save us with his strong arm and his justice to sustain him. He put on righteousness his armor, salvation his helmet. He clothed himself with a robe of vengeance and wrapped himself in a cloak of divine passion. He slipped out of his royal garments, left eternity to enter time, divinity to wrap himself in humanity. The sea of glass for the ocean of separation. He left peace and for the first time felt pain. Because the very hands that held the stars were now sentenced to wear my scars. It was love that purchased this traitor's heart. It's what the prophets spoke about when they envisioned light living in men once again. For this reason, I am legend, predestined for greatness, built for the final hour. I was born for this. With weapons in hand, armor in place, I now march to the beat of a different drum. I will break through battle lines that have been drawn by discouragement and despair. Where more is left to be said, time has met its end. It's now or never. Collision with me, myself, and I. You see, my mission today is clear: to wake the dead. So let freedom's song rage. You're not abandoned. You're not alone. Last day warriors, arise from yesterday's ash and raise your fist with us. We are the army that's charging upon the land. Defeat is no longer an option. It is victory. We stand,
we rise, we give our lives. We stand, we rise, we give our lives. We stand, we rise.
All right. You guys excited to be at youth service tonight? Lame. Listen, I don't know, you guys don't know me, so you don't really know my background, but I come from a background of like hosting concerts and stuff like that, so I'm gonna need you to be a little bit more peppy. I can't have you guys being like, yay. Okay, so we're gonna try this again. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna pretend that I just walked out, okay? So this is what we're gonna do. How's everybody doing? You guys excited to be here tonight? Yeah! There you go. I know you're excited. Well, cool. I'm excited to be with you guys. For those of you that don't know me, my name is TJ Wynn, and I am from Monroe, Georgia, currently. Not from there originally. I'm from North Florida. So whoever said the Gulf Coast earlier during that game, who said that?
I did.
You said Gulf Coast.
And I live in Monroe.
You're the man. We're like family right here. I'm from near Panama City Beach. We got this. Though I'm not really from Panama City, I just tell people I am because the town I'm from is awful. So, I'm broadcasting live to the internet right now. I probably shouldn't have said that. That's a bad move. But anyway, tonight I'm going to be talking to you about a guy in the Bible, and I will give $1 to someone who can guess the guy right off the top of their head without me giving any clues. Somebody just guess somebody from the Bible. Raise your hand. Matthew. Close. Not quite, though. No, even closer. Kind of closer, but because of the name. You've already guessed. You can't guess again. Anybody? I'll give you a. Did you say Joseph? No. Joseph is really close to Matthew. I'll give you a hint. His name starts with a P.
Paul.
You have your
Peter.
hand up. Yes, ma'am? You don't want to guess? Okay.
You just said it, honey.
How'd you know? How do you know you just said it?
Because I said Peter.
But how did you know you said it? You didn't raise your hand.
I didn't know you had to raise our hand.
Cheater.
You didn't put that in the direction.
Cheater, cheater, cheater.
I don't listen to the direction. That's fine.
That's fine. That's fine. All right, so we're going to be talking about Peter. Are you familiar with who Peter is? No. Okay, I'm going to give you a little backstory on Peter, which is good. I was hoping you didn't know who Peter was. Otherwise, it's just going to be really not fun. All right? So Peter was this normal, average dude. He was a fisherman. I was talking to somebody earlier, and they liked fishing. That was cool. You're dressed like you could go fishing right now. Kind of. I mean, there you go. Peter was just this normal guy. He was out fishing in like his daddy, granddaddy's boat, whatever. Peter was just this normal guy, nothing special about him. He'd never really done anything worth talking about in his life. Not a lot is historically known about him before this guy Jesus showed up and said, hey, follow me, just hang out with me. Let me teach you stuff. All right, and Peter, how many of you guys know what Peter did in that moment? Anybody? What now? He followed him. Said yes is a funnier answer, though. He said yes. It's like The Bachelor or something like that. I hate that show. Does anybody else hate that show?
No, I hate it.
It's like the dumbest show in the world.
I love that.
Because love happens in helicopters with roses and stuff. I'm just saying. All right, but now we're jumping into the part of the story where Peter is a man of God. He's been traveling with Jesus now for a long time, like around 3 years. He's been working with Jesus, so he knows a lot about Jesus. You guys would think that, right? Like this guy, him and Jesus are tight. Okay, he's one of the top disciples. He's one of the disciples you hear the most about. Matter of fact, you don't really hear that much about a lot of the other disciples, but you hear a lot about him. Peter stands out because there was one point where Jesus was saying, who does people say that I am? Who do people think that I am? And people were just naming all these weird things, like, well, I say you're like John the Baptist, and you're all these other people. And Jesus was like, well, who do you say that I am? And Peter, without missing a beat, said, well, you're the Son of God. And that was what made Peter special, was because Peter knew who Jesus was just from hanging out with Jesus. He didn't need Jesus to say, hey, I'm the Son of God, for Peter to know that. But we're going to jump into a part of the story where Peter has to do something kind of defining in his relationship with Jesus. And he actually didn't have to do anything. This was a huge moment where Peter could have just sat back and let life happen to him. Let something bad happen. How many people brought their Bibles tonight? One person. YouVersion, I dig it. Anybody got YouVersion on their phones? I live and breathe my YouVersion. Anybody? Okay, so that means you can get out your phones and pretend to pay attention. I'm just kidding. If you want to get out your phones and read along with me, you can. If you want to use your Bible, which is extra bonus points, you can as well. I'm going to be starting in John 18, verse 2. And I promise I'll try to make this as interesting as possible whenever I'm reading. All right? All right, so how many of you guys know... I'm going to show ruin this. Spoiler alert. Jesus died on the cross. You guys familiar with that story? It's unbelievable, right? No one knew this part was coming. Oh my goodness. Well, what we're doing is literally just mere hours before that happened. This is where we're going to start off, all right? So we're going to be starting John 18, verse 2. It says, Judas, the betrayer, knew this place because Jesus had often gone there with his disciples. The leading priests and Pharisees had given Judas a contingent of Roman soldiers and temple guards to accompany him. Now with blazing torches, lanterns, and weapons, they arrived at the olive grove, like they're hunting like Frankenstein or something like that. All right, Jesus fully realized all that was going to happen to him, so he stepped forward to meet them. Who are you looking for, he asked. Jesus the Nazarene, they replied. I am he, Jesus said. Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them, and Jesus said, I am he. They all drew back and fell to the ground. Once more he asked them, who are you looking for? And again they replied, Jesus the Nazarene. I told you that I am he, Jesus said, and since I am the one you want, let these others go. He did this to fulfill his own statement. I did not lose a single one of those you have given me. Then Simon Peter drew a sword and slashed off the right ear of Malchus, the high priest's slave. But Jesus said to Peter, put your sword back into its sheath. Shall I not drink from the cup of suffering the Father has given me? Now, it's crazy. Peter could have just sat there. How many of you would have sat there and just watched it happen? These armed guards are coming. Be honest with me. Raise your hands. Come on. I need you guys to be in on this. Don't sit there and bend and be like, I'd have fought for Jesus. I'm sorry. I love Jesus to death. But if I saw a legion of like armed men coming, I'd be like, So, he's right there. All right? Seriously, it had been a scary thing. Peter could have been facing his own death. And the crazy thing was Peter reacted without thinking. As soon as the men went for him, he grabbed his sword. Now, I doubt Peter was looking to shave off his ear. Okay? I doubt he was looking to take a little off the side. I'm sure he was actually trying to take a little down the middle and was trying to end this guy's life. But he missed. And if you know the story later on, Jesus actually repairs the man's ear, puts it right back on him, and tells Peter that that's not okay. He shouldn't have done that. Now, this is what I want you to get. Here's a little disclaimer. I'm not telling you to go to school and cut people's ears off for Jesus, okay? That's not at all what I'm saying, all right? What I'm telling you to do is that we have to be ready to stand up for Jesus at a moment's notice. Even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when it looks like it could cost us something as important as our popularity. Which is tough, because sometimes we're well-liked or sometimes we're not well-liked, and we feel like if we say something for Jesus, one of two things is going to happen. People are going to stop liking us, or people are going to not like us even more and say even meaner things about us. I was in the second category. I was afraid to stand up for Jesus a lot in my life. I was not like Peter the entire time. But Peter's story doesn't stop there. As a matter of fact, let's go a few more hours into the future. In Luke 22, all right, verse 59, it says, about an hour later, someone else insisted this must be one of them because he is a Galilean too. This lady's talking to Peter. And he says, or no, it was a man, I'm sorry. But Peter said, man, I don't know what you're talking about. And immediately while he was speaking, the rooster crowed. At that moment, the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Suddenly, the Lord's words flashed through Peter's mind. Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny me 3 times. You will deny that you even know me 3 times. And Peter left the courtyard weeping bitterly. Now, this was a guy who just a few hours ago cut a man's ear off to protect Jesus. He stood up against an armed guard thing for Jesus. But yet here he is talking to people who aren't armed, who can't do anything to him, and they're simply saying, hey, this guy knows Jesus. And he says, oh, no, I don't. I have no idea who that freak is. You know, that's what was happening right here. There's several reasons that Peter could have been like that. And if we think about what those reasons would have been, it could have been because, one, Peter didn't want to go through what Jesus was going through. That's a scary, scary thing. To think that if I identify with that guy, they're going to beat me just as crazy as they're beating Jesus right now. And I don't want to be a part of that. It could have also been that he was just terrified. He was watching a guy that he had followed for 3 years, that he had given his life up. He had left everything that he knew to follow Jesus. And now here he is watching all of that get thrown in the garbage. Even though Jesus had told him many times before, I'm going to die. And I'm going to come back. It's going to be okay. But here's Peter going, none of this is going to happen. None of this is even possible. He's forgotten that Jesus said he was going to come back. All he's thinking of is this guy who was supposed to come back and rule the world is now dying. What the heck have I done with my life? Guys, sometimes we're guilty of denying Jesus in our everyday life. Now, not all the time. I'm not saying everybody in here is going around saying, I don't know who Jesus is. But sometimes in the ways that we act, the way that we talk, the way that we treat other people, we deny Jesus. Because when we're Christians, we're called to live differently. We're called to act differently. We're called to look differently. And we're called to be different. You guys, sometimes we'll stand there and people are getting picked on and made fun of, beaten up even, and we don't say a word. That's not what Jesus would want us to do. We deny Jesus in those moments. We deny him even more when we join in on the fun and pick on that person too, because it's funny and they know we like them. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't get that. Sometimes the way you talk. You might go to school and you might cuss. You might have fun with all the people, talk about a bunch of bad stuff that you and your significant other did last weekend. You deny Jesus in those moments. Because you're not living the way he would want you to. And then some of us, we don't deny Jesus. We're put in a hard situation where someone's getting picked on and beaten up and we stand in the way and say, no, that's not okay. And in those moments, we do something that Peter couldn't even do. And we don't deny Jesus. We fully embrace Jesus and we show Jesus to the world. And I know you guys are very capable of doing that. I don't know you personally, but I know your lead pastor. I know what you guys are capable of, all right? Now, Peter's story did not end on a good note right there, right? You guys can communicate with me. Come on, I was raised Pentecostal. I need you guys to speak back to me, okay? This whole just sitting there, I can't take it, okay? So Peter's story, I'm going to try it again, could have ended right there, right? Just say yes or right, whatever, okay? Peter's story could have been done, but it wasn't. Peter's story actually continues. It's crazy because if I'd have been Jesus, I'd have been like, listen, you just denied me 3 times? Get out of here, dude. I'm done with this. Crazy person. But it didn't. Peter actually was used in a very big way, and we're about to read about that too. Peter actually saw Jesus raised from the dead, and it changed his entire life, because then he realized what it was that Jesus had told him when he said, I'm going to die, but I'm going to be back. Because in that moment, Peter was like, Jesus lied to me, man. And then whenever Jesus rises from the dead, he goes, maybe this all does make sense. Maybe this is a real thing. But then Jesus says, what I want you to do is I want you to go and wait for me in Jerusalem. I want you to wait. Something big is going to happen. He doesn't really tell Peter or anybody what's going to happen. He just says, go and wait. And you'll know when something happens. It's crazy because whenever something big happens from God, it's obvious that it's God and not anything else. So if you will, we're going to read about that little story now. Acts 2. Now in this moment, we're about to read about the day of Pentecost. Okay, this is the day that there was a sound of a rushing mighty wind coming through the room, people having the tongues of fire over their heads, speaking in other tongues so that other people could understand what was going on. Everybody from all around the world at that time, someone was speaking in their language, the gospel of Jesus Christ. It was just that amazing that these people who, they had always been from Galilee and always been from these places all their lives, and a lot of them were fishermen, most of them were uneducated, but here they were able to speak people's languages of countries they'd never even been to. That's what had just happened. Jesus showed up in a mighty way, and he promised the disciples that they would receive power whenever the Spirit had come. Now the Spirit had just come. Peter walks out on this balcony, and in Acts 2, verse 14, this is what happens. Then Peter stepped forward with the 11 other apostles and shouted to the crowd, listen carefully, all of you fellow Jews and residents of Jerusalem. Make no mistake about this. These people are not drunk, as some of you are assuming. I'm going to stop myself there because I forgot to tell you. Whenever they started speaking in other tongues and in crazy languages, the people that they shouldn't have known, people started saying that they were alcoholics and that they were drunk, and that was the only reason that was happening. I'm sorry, I've never witnessed a drunk man start speaking Spanish. Have you? Ever? Seen someone that was drunk start speaking French? I have no idea. I've never seen that before in my life. That's a little more difficult to do than just being drunk. But Peter plays along with the crowd. He says, 9 o'clock in the morning is much too early for that. Peter's like, it ain't even 5 o'clock yet. These guys aren't drunk. Chill out with that stuff. He says, no, what you see was predicted long ago by the prophet Joel. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my Spirit upon all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. And your old men will dream dreams. In those days, I will pour out my Spirit, even on my servants, men and women alike, and they will prophesy. And I will cause wonders in heaven above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and clouds of smoke. The sun will become dark and the moon will turn blood red before the great and glorious day of the Lord arrives. But everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. People of Israel, listen. God publicly endorsed Jesus of Nazareth by doing powerful miracles, wonders, and signs through him, as you well know. But God knew what would happen, and his prearranged plan was carried out when Jesus was betrayed. With the help of the lawless Gentiles, you nailed him to a cross and killed him. But God released him from the horrors of death and raised him back to life, for death could not keep him in its grip. King David said this about him, I see that the Lord is always with me. I will not be shaken, for he is right beside me. No wonder my heart is glad and my tongue shouts his praises. My body rests in hope, for you will not leave my soul among the dead or allow your Holy One to rot in the grave. You have shown me the way of life, and you will fill me with your joy, with the joy of your presence. Dear brothers, think about this. You can be sure that the patriarch David wasn't referring to himself, for he died and was buried, and his tomb is still here among us. But he was a prophet, and he knew God had promised with an oath that one of David's own descendants would sit on the throne. David was looking into the future and speaking of the Messiah's resurrection. He was saying that God would not leave him among the dead or allow his body to rot in the grave. Almost done. God raised Jesus from the dead, and we are all witnesses of this. Now he is exalted to the place of highest honor in heaven at God's right hand, and the Father, as he had promised, gave him the Holy Spirit to pour out upon us, just as you see him here today. For David himself never ascended into heaven, yet he said, the Lord said to my Lord, sit in the place of honor at my right hand until I humble your enemies, making them a footstool under your feet. So let everyone in Israel know for certain that God has made this Jesus, whom you crucified, to be both Lord and Messiah. This is the guy who legit just 50 days was denying Jesus. 50 days ago was saying he had no idea who Jesus was. Now he's standing on a ledge saying, you guys killed the guy that came here to save you. That's a huge difference. See, what I'm wanting you to understand by that is that Peter fell, but he rose to the occasion. Peter's failure didn't stop him from doing something crazy. If you continue to read that story, it says that 3,000 people came into the church that day. They got saved that day. They found Jesus for the first time that day. 3,000 people found Jesus for the first time from a guy who 50 days ago said he had no idea who Jesus was. See, what I want you guys to understand is it doesn't matter what your life looks like right now. It doesn't matter. God still wants to do something with your life and still can do something with your life. You might say, TJ, listen, you don't know what I've done, man. You don't even know who I am. And you're right. I have no idea who any of you are, except for two of you. All right? But you guys might be like, you have no idea what I've done. I'm the worst of the worst. People at school don't like me. My parents don't like me. No one likes me. I can't do anything about it. But the deal is Peter was in the same boat. And yet Peter spoke to 3,000 people, and they found Jesus that day. We can all be just as life-changing as Peter if we want to be. Now, I'm not saying you have to go stand out on a ledge and preach to 3,000 people, but if you want to, I'll do my best to be in the crowd and shout amen for you. Because it's hard to preach when people are quiet. Okay? But the deal is, God wants to do something in your life. Now, Peter's story, again, didn't stop there. This is actually one of my favorite parts of Peter's story. Now, this isn't recorded in the Bible, but this is recorded in several historical documents. Rome has acknowledged that it has happened. All these other places have acknowledged that it has happened. It's taught everywhere. But we're going to talk about where Peter's life led him to. You think that Peter probably died an old pastor, right? He died in some big log cabin on a hill, you know, that they paint in those YouTube videos, those little paint-by-number things. No, Peter's life wasn't that good. See, Peter, when he lived in Jerusalem, kept getting arrested constantly. He kept getting beaten publicly. And his wife and his kids were all witness to it. They all saw it happen, and sometimes they even got drug into it. So Peter, doing what any godly man would for that situation, said, I'm going to get my family and get out of here. So Peter moved to what he thought would have been the best place to go to. He moved to Rome. And when he got there, shortly after he got there, Nero, how many of you guys know who Nero is from school? Anybody? A couple of us know who Nero is. You guys will get there if you haven't learned it yet, okay? But Nero publicly declared himself an enemy of God. Publicly said, I don't like this God guy. Matter of fact, I hate him. And he wanted to declare war on God. But Peter, meanwhile, is in Rome trying to preach the gospel to the unsaved people, trying to tell people about this guy that died for them. When Nero does that, Nero orders every apostle, which Peter was, to be slaughtered that they can find. Even the ones that were just around them, chilling out, not even in Rome. He sent out people to go after them as fast as they could. But Peter was in Rome. It was easier. He captured Peter, and Peter was imprisoned for 9 months. 9 months. He chilled in prison. He was beaten. It wasn't fun. He wasn't in prison and handed little strawberry daiquiris all day. Okay? No, he was beaten, black and blue, every day. But the thing was he wasn't the only one that was captured and put in prison. His family was with him. His wife and children was put in prison with him. Well, a day came where he had to watch his wife and his kids be murdered for the sake of Jesus. It was a painful moment for Peter. And in that moment, Peter could have reverted back to who he was and said, I don't want anything to do with this God business. I'm out of here. Jesus, just let this happen to my family. But instead, he stayed in prison for a little while longer. And finally, he was brought out. And Nero said, you know what? If you love your Jesus so much, you're going to die just like him. And they had prepared a cross for Peter to die on. They led Peter to the cross, and Peter just instantly shouted, no! I don't deserve to die that way. I'm not worthy of my Savior's death. I can't. So what Nero did was he took the cross down and they turned it upside down. And Peter was crucified upside down publicly for what he believed. Peter gave everything for what he believed. We're talking about a guy whose life showed no evidence for Jesus in a moment that it needed to. In a moment when Jesus needed people to stand up for him and to be the way that they needed to be and love him in front of other people, Peter failed in that area. And then Peter went on to lead thousands of people to Jesus. And you would think that God would reward that and let him live gloriously forever. And God was blessing him in such a way that 2,000 years later, we still talk about this guy. We still talk about some no-name fisherman who, if it wasn't for Jesus, we'd have no idea who he was. He would have died and history would have never recorded him. But because of that, the Christian church is built on this guy. Because of what Peter did, the Christian church was born from that. Now, I'm not saying God's going to require your life. I'm not telling you that you're going to die tomorrow. You probably are going to die on some mountaintop in a log cabin, nice thing, whatever, if that's where you want to live. I don't want to live there. Okay? I don't like the cold. I don't like the hot either, so it's a problem. But I'm just saying that living for God is a lot better than anything else. Even if it does mean giving up everything that you're afraid to give up. Status. That's hard for high schoolers. Middle schoolers, you guys are getting there. You're figuring that out. Once you make a name for yourself, it's hard to lose that name. It's hard to be willing to walk away from that name. Even if it's a name you don't want, it's hard to lose that name especially. Guys, I'm not talking about going to Rome and giving your life for Jesus. That's not a thing. Okay, but what I am talking to you about is giving your life for him every day. Paul talks about crucifying himself daily in a spiritual sense. Dying to himself daily to live for Jesus, and I'm asking you to do the same thing. Every day wake up and say, you know what, it's not about what I want, it's about what he wants. It's not about looking cool, it's about showing other people Jesus. Because guys, we don't have much time left on this world, unfortunately. People gotta know. People gotta know. And I'm not telling you to run around with a megaphone screaming, get saved or go to hell. Okay? I'm not telling you to do that. That doesn't work, believe it or not. Okay? People don't like to be screamed at. But I am telling you to just not deny Jesus in those critical moments. In those moments where you can stand up for someone or you can say, hey guys, listen, I'm not about that life. Stand for Jesus in those moments. Don't deny him. Don't turn away from him for social status or so that no one will make fun of you or anything like that, because I'm telling you, living for him is the best decision you can make. As someone who's been doing it for a long time, and I'll be honest with you, I've denied Jesus in front of my friends. It's happened. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. That's the worst part. There would be times, less now, where I would want to fit in, so I would let people talk about stuff that they didn't need to talk about, but yet I would join in on it because I was here and I wanted to look cool and I wanted to be accepted. But I was denying Jesus the whole time. I was denying that I knew him. I was cheapening his name because people knew that I knew him, but yet I'm saying Jesus is cool with this stuff. Guys, I just want to encourage you to try your hardest to give everything for Jesus every day. Let's pray real quick.